Hi, everybody. I feel so positively reinforced. And that's a lot of what I'm going to talk about today. The title of this talk, you may or may not remember, is Treat Everyone Like a Dog. I did not make that up. My colleague and dear friend Karen London wrote a book titled Treat Everyone Like a Dog. And if I was smart, I would have brought a bunch of copies for you guys to buy too, because it's just a fabulous book. And it's a book about using the principles that we now know based on science and experience and compassion of how to train animals of any species to do just about anything. And Karen took all of that knowledge and applied it in an incredibly practical way to our lives, which is exactly what I want to talk about today. So I'll talk for 30 or so minutes. I didn't even ask about the timing. 30 or so minutes and then a few questions. Does that sound good? Okay. So I want to start with a story. It's a story about me and my husband, Jim, who is here. Bless him. Bless him for allowing me to tell this story, because it's a story on us and about when we were first dating. We have slightly different versions, but he has graciously given me permission to tell you my version, because it's fun and it's illustrative. So here's my version. So 24 plus years ago, Jim and I just started dating, and I was sort of like, he's sort of liking him. And
how old did you say you were?
I'm 75. And now, at the moment, and thank you. And so he told me something when we were talking, we were chatting at one point, and he said, I just need to tell you, my ex-wife used to complain about the fact that when I got to work or when I was working on something, I got really focused on it. So she'd need me to call about the kids or something, or she'd need me to get back to her. She'd send me an email and I wouldn't answer it. And it was really frustrating to her. And she would, complain about it when I came home. So I just need to let you know that. So I thought, okay, important piece of information. So I'm an animal behaviorist. What do you do about that? So I started sending him really short little emails, like, hey, isn't the sun nice today? Period. And I would get no answer. But every once in a while, I would get an answer, which I would then reinforce using all the principles of positive reinforcement and no positive punishment. No nagging, right? So I would just email back and I'd say, I just can't wait to see you tonight. So this is a healthy American male, right? Who hasn't been in a relationship. And I answered by saying, can't wait to see you. And slowly, over a period of weeks, I started getting emails back. Like, pretty fast. Because I was using positive reinforcement. I wasn't using punishment, which was nagging about it after the fact. So that's just my very personal example of how we can use these principles to influence the behavior of those around us, whether it's training our dog or training, influencing, helping our kids, our grandkids, our partners, our spouses, our friends, and the hardest subject of all, ourselves, to do what we want. So one of the things people very commonly respond to this is like, that sounds really manipulative. It was really manipulative. And Karen and I always laugh about this because I never heard anybody say when somebody used a jerk on a leash to stop a dog from pulling when you're out on a walk. I have never heard anybody say, oh, that's so manipulative, right? It's all about influencing behavior, and that's what we do because we're social species. A huge amount of what we do is try to influence the behavior of others around us, whether it's whether it's getting your grandkids to like pick up at the table after they're done eating, or your employee, to get something in on time, or yourself to follow the new nutritional diet you decided to follow, right? So that's who we are, and that's what we do, is we try and influence others around us. We try and influence our behavior. And there are ways to do it that work well, and there are ways to do it, commonly used, that don't work well. So I want to talk about some of those now. So let me first talk about positive reinforcement. It sounds so simple, right? Ask your dog to sit, you give your dog a cookie. It's really simple. But it's actually, when you get into the weeds, it's actually pretty darn complicated. But in a good way, in a fun way. It's not rocket science. Once you know it, it's like, oh, I got that. But sometimes it's just sort of not intuitive. So let me give you an example. Positive reinforcement, well, let me just start by saying positive reinforcement is always defined by the receiver. And that's not always something we're thinking about. So Nikki is here from the Dane County Humane Society. I'm going to introduce her in a little bit. But she's nodding, she's nodding. So let me give you an example of how that often isn't understood or isn't used. When I was doing dog training classes, I cannot tell you how many people would call their dog to come. They'd give a recall signal. And sometimes it was hard. The dog was really distracted. There were other dogs there, right? There were distractions. Maybe there was even food on the floor. And they'd say, Chester, come. And Chester would come. And he would get to them, and they would go, good boy, and pat him on the head. And when I was training classes, I would say, does everybody see what Chester just did? Because usually what Chester did was turn his head away and go like, why are you punishing me? I hate it when you slap me on the head. And I know we're supposed to be careful about being anthropomorphic, but it can be really useful. Do this to yourself. It's not fun. We do it to kids too, right? They hate it. We all hate it. So Chester didn't want this, and almost no dogs want this, except golden retrievers, who you can touch in any way, pretty much, basically, and they're like, oh, good, that was so good. But they are the exception. So you have to remember, positive reinforcement is always defined by the receiver, and you need to be really thoughtful. What kind of reinforcement does your dog like the best? We have 2 Border Collie working sheepdogs. If I gave either one of them a treat for doing something while working the sheep, honestly, they don't have to speak English, you don't have to speak dog, they would look at me like, what? What? Like, that's not what they want right then. So not only does positive reinforcement is defined by the receiver, but it also depends on the time and the context, right? So be really, really thoughtful about what it is you think is reinforcing. The only way you know is by the behavior of the receiver. That's the only way you know. They will tell you. If they liked it, they'll do it again, right? So, and this doesn't just apply to dogs. This applies to people. But one of the most well-known examples of this actually in business is economists, business experts have learned it is far more effective to give an employee a bonus than it is a salary increase, even if the salary increase is larger. Because what happens with a salary increase is, like, after 2 months, it's like, yeah, that's baseline, right? So month 4, they're like, yeah, so that's baseline. Nothing's happening. But if you give them a big bonus all at once, first of all, it's like, whoa, that was really big and impressive. And then they're waiting for, what did I do to get that, right? What did I do to get that? What can I do to get that again? So again, it works just as well with people as it does with dogs and any other animals. There's another aspect of positive reinforcement that I just love, because you can get really geeky about this if you're interested in neurobiology, like a scientist named Jaak Panksepp. Jaak Panksepp was the god of understanding the neurobiology of emotions. He's since passed away, but the guy just did amazing work. And one of the things he figured out, which was so cool, I think, was that when you are using positive reinforcement, one of the best reinforcers is a neurochemical called dopamine. And I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with it. Dopamine is that wonderful neurohormone that it creates feelings of pleasure and sort of connection and motivation. It motivates people. It's what you feel like when you're going to something you're really excited about. You were 20 and going to a concert, right? You're going to something you're really excited about. That flood of feeling is like, woo, that's dopamine. So what Panskep discovered is that if, for example, you give your dog a treat, for let's just say sitting, so you say sit, you give your dog a treat, when do you think the dopamine is strongest? When is it most strongly produced? When does the dopamine hit the brain and make the dog feel the best? You would think it would be when you give him the chicken, right? It's not. It's not. It's when he anticipates the chicken. So how many people have dogs, had dogs, love dogs? Just probably a few of you, right? Just making a wild speculation here. How many of you, like Jim and I do, we're walking outside, we have jackets on, dogs do something that we're really wanting them to do, and you reach in your pocket for the treat, right? That's when the dopamine hits. And that actually becomes a reinforcement, and I've used that a lot. One of the ways I deal with wanting to reinforce my dogs, sorry, I have why do we call it a frog in my throat? That's a disgusting concept. It's a really horrible concept. I like frogs, but I don't really want one in my throat. But anyway, sorry, it's allergies. Anyway.
Like a glass of water?
I have some bit here. That's very kind of you. I should think of drinking that some, shouldn't I?
Actually, sometimes
Thank
it
you.
helps.
It does. Thank you.
The lady that gave the lecture last week told us about water.
I love that. Okay, let's have him come up. Anyway, sorry I missed that. So I'm going to get my water out here. Hang on a second. So sometimes I use that knowledge about when dopamine hits. I'm outside, I'm in the woods trail, for example. I've got nothing. There's a deer, right? Not fenced, woods trail. Skip sees a deer, and he starts to go. And I say, stand, skip, skip, and he does all that. And it's like, that was a big deal, right? That was really hard. He would just flushed a deer. I got nothing. So I will reach into my pocket, and then when he comes to me, I will just give him a little tiny chuck, like hold my hand like I would if I was giving him a treat. And he's like, thank you, and runs off, right? Now that's not gonna work forever. Don't get sloppy with that, right? But it's something really great to know. It's a sort of a fun, geeky thing sometimes. So there's another aspect of positive reinforcement that we need to be really careful about. And that is inadvertently positively reinforcing somebody or something. We all know the bark example, right? So how many people have dogs who bark when you sort of wish they wouldn't or did, once in your life? That's right. So the scenario often goes, bark, bark, bark. Chester, quiet. Bark, 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 bark. Chester, be quiet. Bark, 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 bark. I said be quiet. Chester, shut up. Right? Barking is a social activity to a canine. And hearing you bark back is reinforcement. You are literally reinforcing your dog. And we do it all the time. It's really hard, believe me. I know, I'm so very human. Ask my husband. I make mistakes all the time. But just be aware of it. It's like getting louder is not a way to shut a dog up, right? And the other way that we can get in trouble with positive reinforcement is not just sort of when you're doing it when you don't want to. In reinforcing something you don't want. It's about timing. You can reinforce timing in a way you don't want to because of the schedule of reinforcement. And this is the hardest one. I am completely susceptible to this, I guarantee you. So we can take any example. Your dog wants you to pet her more. Maggie, my dog, I'm talking about you. All right, so she starts pawing you, right? And you say, enough, that's all. And you're watching, PBS Mystery something, right? Paw, paw. Maggie, that's enough. Paw, 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 paw. Oh, Maggie. And I start rubbing her belly. Right? And she's like, okay, it took 5 times. All right, I'm recording that. And she is recording that, right? Maybe not conscious, she is recording that. And we do it all the time. So say your partner, your grandkid, your kid, somebody is like, you're in the market, you're in the supermarket, and you're with a grandkid or a kid or whatever, and they're like, I want some candy. Not now. I want some candy. I want some candy. I believe I want some candy. And then they start escalating. You're like, oh, this is getting embarrassing. So, and you're getting tired, right? And so finally, oh, there goes the Milky Ways, right? You just taught that child stamina. And there's tons of research on this, tons and tons and tons of research on this, is the way to create it's called a lack of extinction. The way to create stamina and have a particular behavior not go extinct is to only reinforce it on a variable schedule. And that's a good thing to know. So once I have a behavior trained, I don't reinforce the dogs every single time. I don't do it. I change what the reinforcement is, but I also change the schedule because that makes it more persistent. So that's a great thing when you're working with the behavior you want, and it's a big problem when you're working with a behavior you don't want. And it's really hard, it's really hard to do, but once you discover the power, it gets a lot easier. So there's another aspect of positive reinforcement that's also sort of anti-intuitive. And it's summarized by saying the problem behavior is the reinforcement. It's called the Premack Principle by a psychologist. Oh, by the way, I was thinking about positive reinforcement and dopamine. And so I want to circle back to something because I think I'm going to illustrate that in a little bit, but I'm not going to tell you how or why. But in a little bit, I'm going to reinforce you. Yes, I am. So back to Premack. So the problem behavior is the solution. Basically, that's the best summary. So let me give you a practical example with dog training. So one of our dogs is named Skip. He's a 7-year-old border collie. We came from Ireland. He's obsessed with working sheep. He's lovely in the house. He's quiet. He's a lovely house dog. But when I get out my whistle or put on my barn shoes or get my livestock stick crook, he just goes crazy. And when I first got him, he would, as soon as you opened the door, he would run to the barn at like 25 miles an hour. I mean, just a bullet, right? But then he would run back. Are you coming? Are you coming? And then he would run to the barn. And then he would run back. And he has a heart condition. So by the time we actually got to the sheep, his tongue was on his toes. He was like, so I can't have this, right? So I have to teach him not to dash off to the barn. So how am I going to do that? So what is the best reinforcement I could use to teach him that? The problem is the solution. What does he want more than anything in the world? to go to the barn where the sheep are. So that was the reinforcement. So I would get to the door and I would say, Skip, wait. And he's a pretty easy dog. He's a border collie. He's pretty sensitive. So I just go, Skip, wait. And he'd be like, ooh, right? And the second I got just this like, ooh, I'd be like, okay, go to the barn. So gradually, I'd open the door, look at him. He's waiting. Okay, go to the barn. So I could walk, I can walk out 10 feet now with him beside me and say, go to the barn, and he'll take off. So the problem is the solution. Again, think about this really hard because it's not intuitive, but it's so powerful. It's just incredibly powerful. So if you have a dog who's doing something, I've even used it with barking with some clients. What does your dog want to do? It wants to bark. Make that the reinforcement. It's very anti-intuitive, but it's really, really powerful. It's really fun. My probably best example is I had visitors over. They were sitting on the porch drinking some beer, and I had a visiting dog there, and she found a dead bird, a disgusting, wormy, just really gross dead bird. And somebody said, I bet you can't get that away from her. Right? And I was like, game on. And I wanted to anyway, because it was disgusting and I didn't want her eating it. So what do you want to do, right? It's tricky because you have to go to them, and then you're in a chase game, right? Now I'm in a chase game. So I knew that wasn't going to work. So first of all, I used what I know about dogs, and I started running away from her. So I'd go out, get her attention, I would run the other way. And she was like, oh, I'm a dog. I like to chase. So she'd come towards me a little bit. So I just did that more and more, got her closer and closer, and then I took the bird away. And I got applause and clapping, and yay, you won the bet. And I gave her back the bird. And they were like, what, you idiot? It's like, no. I gave her what she wanted. And then we just did it again. And at the end of like 3 trials, I could just say drop, and she'd be like, okay, here's a stinky, wormy, dead bird for you. Right? So it's the problem is the solution. By the way, I had said something about dopamine. So I want to do something related to that. We have here a representative from the Dane County Humane Society, Nikki.
Yes.
Right?
Hello, I am Nikki.
And one of the reinforcements is the Senior Center very graciously offers speakers a fee. And I said, don't you think we should give that to the Dane County Humane Society? So yes, I think we should. So they do so much good work, you guys. It's very hard work sometimes. They do so much good work, and you deserve so much reinforcement. So thank you. So there's another aspect about influencing behavior that's not operant conditioning. Positive reinforcement, punishment, those are all the Skinnerian 4 squares, right, of operant conditioning. But you all remember Pavlov and classical conditioning, right? Classical conditioning is astoundingly powerful. And in my opinion, we don't use it anywhere enough on our dogs, on our friends, family, and on ourselves. So let me just sort of tell you a story that it sounds like I'm going off tact, but I'm going to go to medicine for a minute because it illustrates something really important about classical conditioning. So we all know about, I'm going blank, I'm doing a brain fog thing. So when you take a medicine but it doesn't have medicine in it and it still has, thank you, I couldn't find it, thank you. It's so nice to be in this group. I'm with my people. It's so nice. So we all know about the placebo effect, right? And how it's been really dismissed as something sort of trivial and embarrassing. It's like, it's just all in your mind. It's just all in their minds. It's not real, right? So here's a study that was done on dogs that brings that kind of attitude into question. So there was a study done in which dogs were given a pill, a medicine, for something the dogs needed. I don't remember what it was, I'm so sorry. The dogs needed this particular medicine for some kind of a condition. And it worked. Then they stopped giving a pill with the active ingredient in it. They gave the dog a pill that was the same size, the same shape, and I'm guessing pretty much the same taste without the active ingredient. But they did it exactly the same. They did it in the kitchen, in the same place. They did it at the same time of day. They used the same method. And it worked. I know. It's like, whoa, goosebumps, right? Like, whoa, it worked. And it worked because the dog's physiology and neurobiology had associated all of those things with a particular physiological or neurological response. That's classical conditioning. That's how strong it is. I learned about it in a far less, elegant way when I drank champagne when I was 16 with my friend on New Year's Eve when her parents left us alone with a bottle of champagne on a sailboat in the harbor in San Diego. We found another bottle of champagne, and the next day, not only did I have a hangover, but we went sailing on the open ocean. And I learned, one, people really do turn green. It's a thing. You really do. Don't ever offer me champagne. Ever again. I still can't drink it. I literally can't drink it. That's food aversion learning, which is the only one trial learning actually there is, but it's also classical conditioning. So the way I use it personally, just give you an example, is I like to write, as you know, and I have a big, huge, lovely Apple monitor and computer in my study, and then I have a laptop. And I made a rule years and years ago when I was working on the books that are back there, when I was working on those books, that I would only work on big books, big writing projects on that computer in the study, and I would do nothing else there. I cannot check email, right? No email. I can do research for the book, right? I can go on Wi-Fi, do research for the book. When I sit down there, I am writing a big book. I am right now just finished a manuscript for a mystery novel that just went to a publisher to see if they're interested. And it all happened on that computer. No work-related stuff happened on my laptop. And you can use that too. You can use it whenever you want. Where do you want to establish a good habit? Think of what you can do to sort of narrow it down such that you do X only in Y and you don't do A, B, or C in Y. I actually think of this place, this is a classical conditioning place. I love libraries. I love these kind of community centers. I mean, what happens here? What happens is community. What happens is we all sort of get that dopamine feeling of connection and oxytocin. We feel safe. We feel attached to people. So when you come in here, you just sort of feel good. I go in libraries and I'm like, I feel good. I go in bookstores, it's like, I feel good. They're like therapy to me practically, right? You may have places like that too. I'm the same when I go outside in nature. That's very much a place that I get a lot of strength and energy from. So just think about how you use your space in your apartment, in your home, and if you can use that to help develop a habit you'd like to strengthen, right? So one of the things that really hits you when you do what I do is, and this would happen in family dog training classes. Nikki can attest to this, I'm sure. So the first night of family dog training classes, it's chaos. And you stand there as the trainer, you're like, oh, what have I done? This is a mess. And literally on week 3, about maybe 2, depends on the dogs, right? Maybe on week 3, literally every time I'd be like, oh my God, this stuff works. and that's the point of this book. This stuff works. It really, really does. So the more you can learn about how to influence behavior using what we understand about science and what works and what doesn't, the better off you're going to be, and you'll be able to train the hardest subject of all, which is yourself, right? So I'm going to thank you all and then open it up for questions. If you guys would like to ask a few. There's one right there.
My dog loves to chase squirrels.
And I'm going to repeat your question so you guys. So she has a squirrel chasing dog.
Yeah.
Nobody's ever heard of that before, right?
So when he sees, it's a little Yorkie, when he sees squirrels outside, he wants to go out. So we open the patio door, he goes out, chases them.
Yep.
Within 2 minutes, he wants to come in.
Okay.
And then it's the same thing over and over and over again. And so if I shut the drapes, he'll push them aside. Because
So-
he's so intent, he knows they're out there.
She has a dog addicted to squirrels, basically. There's a sheepdog trainer who talks about levels of intensity of sheepdogs. He said, my best analogy is a drug analogy. There's the cocaine weekend users, there's the cocaine addicts, and then there's the crackheads. You have that third category. Like, where's the squirrel? Where's the squirrel? Where's the squirrel? So this is the exact equivalent of skipping the barn. You have a dog who wants to go chase squirrels. Does your little Yorkie love, I don't know, real chicken, like a cooked piece of chicken? Not necessarily when he's interested in squirrels, but any other time.
When he first gets a treat, he goes and hides it. And then later on, when you get him to sit, then he'll eat the treat.
He hides his treats. He's a squirrel. We figured it out. He's a squirrel in a Yorkie costume. So what I would do is first I would find a treat that he really, really loves. And cooked chicken is very, very powerful. Talk about reinforcement defined by the receiver. Most commercial dog treats do not work for most behavioral issues. They're just not good enough. What would you do for a flake of cereal? Not a lot, right? Not a lot. Maybe a little, not a lot. What would you do for a piece of chocolate? We all know the drill, right? So cooked chicken is my go-to. When I got Skip, dog had been raised in a barn in Ireland, never been in a house, knew nothing, right? I just cooked up 2 chickens, chopped them up, and had them in a freezer in little bags. So what I would do is with your Yorkie, I would make sure he loves chicken more than, almost life itself. And then in the absence of a squirrel, I would teach him a look at me, or a wait, or something that's going to make him pause, and then immediately give him the chicken. Now, Nikki can help you with this, or Dog's Best Friend, the business that I had that I'd sold now to Amy Moore. So any trainer can help you with this. And then you're going to start here at the window, maybe there's no squirrel, and you're going to say, look, and he looks at you, and you say, okay, and you let him out. So you're going to use squirrels as the reward, because that way you can at least damp down, like every single time you have to open the door, and then he goes out, and then he comes back in again. I would also give him like stuffed toys, maybe a Kong stuffed with really great food to try and keep his mind off of squirrels. There's always videos. You can use squirrel video. So good luck. Good luck. Not always easy to teach those little Yorkies, but they've got brains. It all works. So anybody else? Yeah.
I've had Labradors, which you helped me with.
Yes, she
but
came
I
to the
also-
farm once for
I
some
have,
classes.
A terrier now. What a difference.
Oh, yes.
But, and she's lovely,
Yes.
except she doesn't seem to be able to not bark. And I'm wondering how much the breed has to do with the ability to train them, or is it a lost cause?
It's well, yes and no, and yes and yes and no and yes. Yeah, that's my answer to all that. So that is such an important point. It's not everything, but it's overriding. Example is like border collies live on a little farm outside of Black Earth, have a little farm, have had working sheep guarding dogs. Last last one was Tulip. And I would never have taken Tulip. So we often take the Border Collies off the farm into places where we're comfortable, maybe friends' houses, but somewhere where we let them off leash because they're Border Collies. And they were bred to listen to you when they're 500 yards away chasing prey, right? So it's a lot easier to train a Border Collie. You have to train them, but it's just a lot easier. Would I ever, as a professional dog trainer, as a PhD animal behaviorist, would I ever have taken Tulip out somewhere with no fences, in the woods, with no leash, and just let her go? Not ever. So breed is hugely important. And so, you know, when people are looking at what kind of breed do they want, they often look at what they look like, which, you know, we're human, right? I care a lot about what my dogs look like. Skip is like, I don't know, Fabio. I mean, he's just gorgeous. Maggie, our other dog, she thinks so too. We're all like, oh, he's so handsome. But you know, we all know, right? Looks only go so far. One of the things I love about Border Collies is that they're so responsive and you can take them out loose. And if you're a good trainer, train them to be really reliable and with you. If, for example, Skip has flush deer and I can say stand and he will. So would I think I could do that with a terrier? No. Could I do that with a Great Pyrenees sheep guarding dog? No. And in terms of barking, oh, they come preset. They come with a software program that, I mean, they vary. So Maggie is our barker. Skip never barks, literally, ever, literally. But certain breeds are Shelties. Anybody ever had a Sheltie? Right? How are your ears now?
I have kind of given up in some respects. I do what I'm told half the time.
Because you're trainable.
When she starts
You're trainable,
barking
right?
at me as I'm coming down the stairs for the first time in the morning because that's when she wants her walk.
Oh,
And, you know, that's what I do.
yeah.
But
Yeah.
she's lovely in so many ways, and she's actually a rescue, so she came like she is. But
And I'll bet there's some great dogs at the shelter right now, and cats, and birds, and probably a rabbit.
Fish, turtle.
Fish, rabbit,
But
chickens, yeah.
the difference
Yeah.
between the ability to train a Labrador and the ability
It's
to
huge.
make this one
It's
shut up.
huge, and I wish more people would make their breed decisions partly based on that.
And all
you
I
know.
have to do is say, go in your kennel, and she will go to it, open it with her nose, go in and sit down.
There you
I
go.
never have to make her go in her kennel.
That's a great thing.
So-
Absolutely.
Anyway.
Okay, so there's a question back there.
Hi, thank you for your information. Happy to be here. I've got a 5-year-old Aussie,
5-year-old Aussie.
amazing. We actually are a pet therapy team,
Oh, yay.
and very good dog. I hate to say he's a counter surfer because I just have to make sure that there's nothing on the counter that he can get.
Right.
And he's very sly about,
Yeah.
so much so he's gone to the door, I go to the door to let him out, he'll walk back in before he gets back in
Oh, yeah.
and check it out.
Yeah. Yeah, they're not stupid. Yeah.
No, he's very smart.
You know, people just parenthetically, people often tell me, like, my dog is so smart. And I usually say, I'm so sorry. So counter surfing. She has a counter surfing 5-year-old dog who, Aussie, who it was a therapy dog who also loves foraging. Right? Yeah. Well, I'll tell you, there are many ways to deal with it. I have a forager. It's Maggie. Skip is not the forager. He could easily get up on the counters. Maggie is like, what's up there? And it's partly, by the way, Maggie uses her nose. I mean, I could teach her to be a search and rescue dog. I mean, she loves her nose. Skip is like, I don't have a nose. I didn't read that book. I am visual. And when you tell Maggie to go find the toy, I watch Maggie. Because she'll find the toy, right? So your dog probably has a great nose, and it's like, what's up there? What's up there? So there are a couple things you can do. We do a lot of what you do. We really do management. And one of the things a lot of professional trainers do, more than I think is intuitive, a lot of us are like, I could train that, but life is too short, right? I could train that, but I'm not going to, you know? So we just keep the counters clear. We just trained ourselves. We are trainable. We had to reinforce ourselves, right? We got punished a few times, you know. So that's a perfectly reasonable thing to do. I mean, the other options are, I mean, so what are the options? So one is, what kind of positive reinforcement could there be? You could teach your dog hiding treats on the ground, that you want to spend your time looking around the bottom, right? There's nothing good up there, but there's great stuff down there. And you can even be you can be sly about it. Like you can like pretend that, you know, you left the room not knowing, and you came in and she was like, oh, you found the food. Oh. You know, you could set up a whole melodramatic play act scenario. You know, the standard advice relates to punishment, right? Aversives, where you put things up on the counter which are really aversive. And there are times I use aversive. I mean, the strongest one I use mostly is, hey, right? That's my really strong punishment. But I have border collies. You have Aussies who can be very, very receptive also. Very easy, you know, also bred to work as a team, be very, very receptive, but also very smart, right? So I would never recommend an aversive without knowing the dog, you know, but I mean, you know, people put sort of one of the most extremes, you have mouse traps up there, they get their paw caught, I worry about their paws getting hurt. One of my favorites is people who put cookie sheets up with like really like cans and noisy stuff on them, and the dog, cookie sheet is just a little bit over, and the dog flips the cookie sheet over, and they're like, oh, that was not fun. But again, I would never suggest an aversive without knowing the dog, you know, so anyway.
Brandon McMillan, Saturday morning, shows you how to deal with that on Lucky Dog. If you've never seen that program, it's wonderful.
Lucky Dog. I know it not. What kind of methods does Lucky Dog use?
He uses aluminum foil, I believe.
Oh, there you go,
But
aluminum
he has
foil.
cameras around to watch them.
Fun.
If you've never
There you go,
seen
Lucky Dog. Check it out. It's like a,
television program
it's a television program.
from California.
Okay, I know there's one show out that uses a lot of aversives that a lot of my colleagues and I are not very fond of, but I don't know that one. So how about maybe, how many more questions? Like 2, what do you say? Alpha, female, what do you say? Not gonna say alpha bitch, right?
Plenty of time.
We good? We good? How you guys good? Everybody okay? Okay, so a couple more questions. Oh, and by the way, after the talk, I will hang out over there. The center staff, bless them, is going to sell books, and I'm happy to sign. So, okay, question?
Does any of this work with cats?
Yes, absolutely. It works with planaria. It works with Japanese beetles. I mean, literally, it works with single cells, literally. And here's a really fun thing about cats. I'm so glad you brought that up, because dogs are a lousy, lousy way to teach us to be good dog trainers. I just saw your socks. They have little doggies on them, and it's so cute. Oh, I love them. Dogs are too easy. If you want to be a great animal trainer, you do what happened Jim and I were just in Virginia I'm doing research for my second mystery novel. And we were at a seminar that taught trainers how to teach really high-level scent discrimination dogs, sniffer dogs. So, you know, these could be bomb dogs, drug dogs. Most of these dogs were FEMA dogs who work in disaster zones. So they call them HRD, human remains detection, or live finds. So they're looking for people. One of the dogs there found somebody, saved somebody who had been underground for 5 days. Yeah. So they're all learning how to be great trainers of dogs who are scent discrimination dogs. Do you know what they did first? First, there was a lot of lecture, and then they trained chickens. If you want to learn how to train your dog really well, Nikki's nodding, learn to train something besides a dog, because they are so easy. You can be so sloppy. You know, the lead, Craig Schultz, had worked with marine mammals for years and years and years. He reminds me of Ken Ramirez, who also work with zoo animals, marine animals. They are awesome to watch because their timing is impeccable and their precision of movements is astounding. You know, with dogs, we can be really sloppy. Although it could get us into trouble. Example, you call your dog to come. What do most humans do when their dog's over there and they want them to come? They go, come. What is this?
Intimidating.
It's don't block. It's like, this is my space. Don't come in my space. This is my space, right? So it needs to be, come, right? So if you want to learn to train an animal, learn to train a cat. There you go. The trick with cats is that they are less easily reinforced by praise. They love touch on their own terms, depending on the time of day, the cat, the mood, a butterfly in China, right? So they love food, many of them, but it has to be, again, commercial cat treats, I wouldn't even bother, frankly. Go back to chicken. Go back to chicken, or you'll find out what, the first thing to do if you're training actually any individual is to figure out what really reinforces them. At this training seminar, they did a whole hour-long series on, most of these dogs are reinforced with tug games, like really, really intensive, like really intensive tug games. And they spent an hour, there were 11 teams, figuring out which tug toy the dog was willing to work the hardest for, or basically liked the best. So they had constant choice tests. Do you like these two? Okay, you like this one better. Well, what about this one and that one? Oh, you like that one better. What about that one and this other one? Oh, you like that one still best, right? So with cats, you have to figure out what their reinforcement is. And that's what makes it trickier, but all of the principles I'm talking about, absolutely. There are cats who run agility trials. There are therapy cats. There are cats who do just astounding things, just using all these basic principles. Absolutely. Any other animals somebody has out here? Oh, dog, whatever, people?
Dog, yeah.
Oh, dog, absolutely.
I'm embarrassed to ask this question.
Oh, we'll all love you more if you have a question where it makes you look more human.
I have a Havanese that will be 4.
Okay, little tiny, adorable white fluff ball.
He's 13. Actually, he's black with brown.
Oh, well, what do I know? I know nothing.
No, he was the only one like that.
Okay.
I was looking at. But anyway, and I've always had trouble with his housebreaking.
Mm.
And so now, he's still, I would say, we can't go quite a week without him either peeing or pooping inside.
Okay.
I keep the bedroom doors closed. I don't know but like every time I come home, we go outside. He will not, I do have a little small fenced-in yard, but he will not do anything unless I'm with him. He's very attached anyway. Like if I go into the next room, he comes, he's very, very attached. So talking it over with a friend, she said you have to go back to the beginning and like give him a treat. Like when you're outside, he gets a treat every time he goes outside. Right then, you can't wait till you come back.
Right, that's all right. Can you guys hear okay? Good,
So
okay.
if you have any other
Yeah, I
thoughts?
do. Your friend is right on. That's sort of a first step. But I want to ask you a lot about context, because the more predictable behavior is, then the easier it is to change. So is there any predictability? A certain place, a certain time, when he's alone, when you're
Like where
home?
he will go.
Yes.
He won't go in the kitchen, he'll go
Okay.
at the far end of my dining room.
Okay, he goes at the far end of the dining room.
So at one point I had that fenced off,
Okay.
but he was doing really well, so I took those down.
Oh.
And now this morning, I was prepared to come here, so we got up, we went outside, and for some reason I wasn't paying attention, because I always have to watch and make sure he's still.
Yeah, yeah.
And because I guess he came in, because when I went back upstairs to get dressed, when I came down, there
He'd
was
done it.
pee under the dining
Right.
room table.
Right. So it's mostly the dining room.
Yeah, and I have an oriental runner in front of the fireplace,
Okay.
and he really likes to pee on that.
Okay.
And he will pee on the carpet at the foot of my bed, poop.
Oh, okay.
Carpet at the foot of my
Okay. So first of all, don't be embarrassed. I mean, this is
Well, I know
so.
it's me, that's.
No, it's not. It's no. Don't carry. Just throw that burden away. It's. He's doing it. You're not peeing anywhere. You're not peeing in your house.
Pretty good over here.
I was just gonna say this might be relevant to all of us, but we mostly manage to find ways to contain ourselves, right? So there are a lot of things you can do. One of the first things, one of the first things that I'm reminded of related to your problem is when I was working on this kind of a case and I was on my hands and knees sniffing for pee. And I was telling a friend of mine about it, and she said, so, you too can get a PhD to get on your hands and knees and crawl around a carpet sniffing for pee and poo. That was a good investment of your time and money. It's like, yes, it was. It was. So the first thing, first of all, your friend's advice is absolutely right on. Start from the very beginning, and obviously be as observant as you can, right? Try not to miss it, but we all try not to make mistakes, right? Give him great treats. Again, figure out what's the best treat for him. Is it chicken? Is it a piece of meat? Is it liver? Is it dried liver? What is it? But then we need to look at the dining room. At least let's focus on that right now, because dogs don't use visual signals about where to go to the bathroom like we do. And if you think about it, how do you decide where to go to the bathroom? You go in a strange place, you've never been there. How do you decide? We look for it's all visual, right? We don't go like, hopefully, right? We look for the sign, it says restroom, then we look for the, is it us, is it them? Then we go in, we look for the white bowl thing, right? We use visual. Dogs use scent. And if you have the scent from X amount of time of urine in those carpets, that is a neon sign telling your dog, pee here. This is where you pee. So sometimes the solution is tough, because sometimes after a certain period of time, you can't get those smells out. So the best, most effective thing to do is to get rid of all those carpets. Sorry, I know. Or have them cleaned in such a way that you're sure they're being cleaned in a way that's going to deal with the scent, because just soap actually sets the nitrogen in urine and sort of creates that ammonia smell. So just soap is, just washing your carpet is not going to do it. You need to use a chemical. You can buy it anywhere at Mounds or anywhere, specifically designed to ameliorate the scent of urine. If it's been a lot of years, it often doesn't work. So you're great to block that area off. If you can find a way, maybe talk to somebody who professionally cleans oriental carpets and say, this has been urinated on, I need you to deodorize it. You can try that. Then, so you got to get rid of the scent. Then, and I just have to summarize this quickly because I see our time is getting a little low. I want you to change the context. And I'll just illustrate that this way. Do you ever go to a restaurant, have a server put your plate down, and you pick it up and you go into the restroom and you eat it? I don't believe anybody here has ever, if somebody has done that, please don't tell us, actually. We don't even want to know. But it's context related. So what if you get the scent all taken care of as best as you possibly can, and where does your dog eat now? Where is it? Exactly, in the kitchen, where he never goes. Where he never goes. So now he's going to start eating in the dining room that doesn't smell like urine anymore, and is the place where he gets to eat his dinner, and is the place where you sit down and read a book beside him. You get your scent on it. You put a dog bed there. You put your sweatshirt down on there or something. You put his food down there. You recontextualize that room. So that's very effective. It's always hard with a dog this old. There's going to be probably mistakes, but you can definitely decrease the frequency for sure. Okay. All right. Maybe one more.
I just have a quick question on food. I've had this dog for a year, and we had this one food, and all of a sudden she's not eating it.
Oh,
And I've tried another food, and she's not really crazy
oh.
about that one.
And your vet says,
Yeah, she's nothing, she's just being picky.
nah. I would want to delve into that further. So you talked to your veterinarian, you took the dog in,
Yes,
and the veterinarian said,
she's fine.
and what did she do to figure that out?
Look at her teeth and
Yeah. Did she do a chem panel? Did look at her urine, look at her blood, look at her kidney function? How old is the dog?
7 years old.
Okay. So I would go back to my vet and I would say, could we look into this a little harder? Because I've worked with dogs, I've met dogs who from puppy on were like, yeah, I don't care about food. You know, I know 2 people like that. It's like, who are you? It's like, I love food. I can't imagine not loving food, right? But some of us are just wired that way. But if you had a dog who used to love food and doesn't, it's either physiological or there was some traumatic event, which I really doubt, related to eating a particular kind of food. So, I mean, you could try, you know, one of the foods that we use is called Honest Kitchen. It's expensive. It's human grade food. It's dehydrated. You add hot water. It's great, but it's expensive. There's sort of no way around it. It's not, you know, it's not one kibble versus another kibble. Or you could try cooking up whatever, you know, hamburger, chicken, whatever. Give it to her in very small quantities. Be careful about the fat content. I don't want your dog to get into intestinal adventures with too much fat. But mess around a little bit more. Like, well, will you eat, you know, liver? Will you eat steak? Will you eat chicken? And it's certainly true that you can sort of teach a dog to be really picky. It's like, well, I only eat chicken now. But I'm very concerned about a dog who loved food, now doesn't. You know, kidney disease, really common. Cancer, sorry to say, really common reason. I would really delve into this way more carefully. Don't you guys
Labs.
agree?
Labs.
Yeah, yeah.
No, I
yeah.
don't mean dogs, I mean
Lab- Laboratories,
evaluation.
not Labradors, laboratories, she's saying. Right. Well, I see it's 11 o'clock. You have been so much fun. I'm going to thank you. We're all going to reinforce ourselves for being here on a rainy morning. Yay, it rained. And then I'll meet you back. I'm happy to talk more, happy to sign books. And please thank the Monona Senior Center again for having me. It was just a joy.